Right here, it's our first day of working with the logs, doing the building. One thing I want to point out though first is the floor. We put our floor down. It's going to be our finished floor, and there's going to be some dents going to be in it, but it's going to be rustic, to say the least. Anyways, the most important thing I think is, for time, is getting all your logs loaded onto the floor. So if your delivery driver is going to just drop and dump, get a different delivery driver, because even if you have to pay a little bit more, the amount of man hours you would have dragging those logs from the ground up into the work site, it would be laborious unless you have a piece of equipment. Then that's another story. Anyway, so first priority is get the logs up on here, and you make sure you're a couple of feet from every side so that you have areas to move and work. The delivery guy here was only able to put them so far in, but we're still able to work even though it's a little tight. Anyways, you spread them out all nicely, all over the entire floor, so it works. And yeah, we're just gonna go from there. I guess we'll look into the first procedure for cutting your button pass. Okay. So most of the logs that come from the mill are usually what came out of the forest directly. The good thing though is if you're building anything with, and you can find out when you have the mill, is you don't really want them exactly 16, because on a button pass, you have your 16 feet, and then you usually have about 8 or 9 inches, sometimes 6, sometimes 4. But you need that for your pass, which is down there on that other end. You need that little bit of a pass. So it's good that it's rough sawn, but the only unfortunate thing is the cut's not true. So you gotta put your you gotta square it up with your Sasquatch here. I want to take some gray paint here and paint over this skill saw, and we're gonna call it the kill saw, because she's a biggin, and that's what she does. She kills wood. Anyways, it cuts right through this in one pass, and that's over the years of doing this, doing it in 2 passes is extremely difficult. This is definitely the way to do it.
What size do your logs have to be though? Because I know if they get too big, you can't, right?
Okay, so yeah, this will cut 6 1/4, or no, it'll cut 7 1/4 if memory serves. But you can get these logs in 8-inch, and this won't cut all the way through. It'll cut, because they're 7 1/2 actually, but these are 5 1/2, so it has no problem cutting through these. Okay, so we're going to router the ends here because we want to have a sticker in between the two of them so that they join the logs together, and that they're not side shifted and they stay together. It also creates a block to prevent air and light to get through. All right, now that you have your butt right exactly where it needs to be, and that's exactly 5 1/2 inches, which is the thickness of the log. come down to this end. Because that log, you know exactly where it needs to be, and this is where you take your measurement. And you measure to the mark. And this one, it is 176 and 5/8. Then you come over here and you measure from here to 176 and 5/8. And you come down to the other end here. One 76 and 5/8. You take your large speed square, you mark here, you mark on your saw, you see it says 5 inches, 5.5, right? So what I do is I go 5.5, it's the exact thickness of the log, and then I go 5, so my pass. Because you can go 5.5, 5, but you don't know what your logs are going to be unless you've measured them all. And then you cut this out for your next pass. And you always, when you do your 5.5, you make sure you cut that line so that your log will fit in there nicely. All right, so now you take your kill saw and set it for kill. One thing I have to mention though is that there's grooves on the bottom of the log, and every time I cut it, I have to remember to put that blade guard back. Right here you can see, you can actually tell when you cut into one, it's a sappy log, it's all wet. You can actually see like the moisture in it. People ask me, can you cut with green logs? And the answer is 100%. I've already built 5 of them this way. The shrinkage takes place usually on a log cabin on the outer material, the bark material. So when you're doing round log, that's where the shrinkage is taking place. Now, it's not that they don't shrink. They just don't shrink or near the amount that the other ones do. But when you screw them down, you literally tighten them together, and that eliminates the shrinkage. And the weight of the logs will pull them down. And I haven't had a problem on any 4 or 5, any one of them. I think the screws are the key though. You don't want to be using spikes.
So Ethan, you want to tell me what you're doing?
So this is where the butt is going to go inside of this log here. So I'm going to cut a whole bunch of lines here, and then I'm going to knock them out with the hammer once I've cut them, so that the log can go about, I would say about that much into this log here, so that it can butt up. So now we flipped our log over. We'll take our speed square, mark about 1/4 inch. In from this cut here. And we're going to come over here, mark about 1/4 inch in. And then because we're spoiled, we're going to use our other saw that's set to a different height and make a couple notches up there so you can hit it out with the hammer. So now when you have a log, your next row of logs, it's going to pass through here. That you want it to be able to pass in between these two cuts because it's going to sit down flush.
Okay, so now that we have that line, the bottom edge of this log has a bevel on it, so sometimes it's hard to tell. And if you're having a hard time telling, you just take your speed square and line it up with the line, and then pull the log towards it until it touches it. And then what you do is that in the floor here, see right here where the seam is, there's going to be a stud. So we're going to look right there on the outside for that stud, and we're going to put this screw into that stud. Alright, so on this drill, can't see it probably, but it says DCD 999. I had the 996 and I was able to break it, and they have smaller ones. I recommend the DCD 999, it has the most power. And if you need even more jam, I recommend putting the 60 volt on it, but this seems to work just fine. And these put these screws in, no problem. It also runs a 3/4 inch auger bit, no problem, speed 2. We'll show you that later. But this is the drill I recommend because it's a beefy drill. All right, we just hammer in our little wedge here.
I'm drilling a hole to run the wire for an electrical receptacle.
So we drilled a hole on an angle because there's a beam, or there's a ridge board out here. And so that we would hit in between the two joists underneath the floor, we drilled on an angle so that we could run our wire down underneath. It's easier in a crawl space or a full basement to run your wire underneath as opposed to going all the way up the wall and in your ceiling ties. Unless of course you have a poured slab, then it's easier to go up all the way through the wall and down here.
What about around doors?
So with doors, it is easier to use this as a run. You can router this out. You have to put a plate on it, which is fine. And then when you put your 2x6, you make sure you drill, you screw on the outside, and then the 2x6 gives you the ability to mount your door. It also keeps your wall straight.
And that's good for light switches because
Light switches
a light switch has to be up in your hand height, and
that's right, it's a few feet up in the air, and it's always near a door anyway. So that's usually where your light switches are. We put a mark where we drilled the hole so that when we put our next log on, we know where this this is going to be, and sometimes when we're going up full courses, we just put little marks all the way up. It'll be pretty easy though on this next one, because before we put this log in, we're going to cut a box for our first receptacle right into this second log. Put it on the log.
Okay. Watch your fingers.
So Gavin's just rolling it out, and Ethan comes behind. And
You can use a hand stapler, but this works a whole lot better. It's kind of hard to get a hand stapler in there.
yeah, I can see that being a problem.
And they pull out very easily.
That one looks even.
For the higher receptacles, we have to drill through each log as we lay it. Gord showed earlier in the video how we mark it out starting at the bottom, and each time we lay one we drill through and then we continue up. This is necessary to do beforehand, as there's no other way to get into it afterwards. Unless you are wiring around a door or a window, you can kind of get around that. For this reason, we try to keep most of our higher receptacles and light switches on the interior walls, but sometimes it just can't be helped. Like in this case, these were for the refrigerator and above the counter in the kitchen, so it's not too bad. There's only a few of them. Our other outlets are near the floor, so we only had to drill through the first 2 courses of logs. End of day 2, and we're at 6 in some areas and 7 in others. So until next time, have a blessed day.